All right, I don't know what happened. I'm back. If anybody finds me, I'm back. I'm gonna call this part two. This sucks. I don't know what happened. Um, Thank you. Okay, somebody found me. Okay, okay. Let's hopefully we can people will come back and I can. You're back. Thank you guys. I appreciate you. Thank you for the love. I thought for sure I was like, oh, that's all over. I don't know what happened. This is my first time doing a stream. This is why I said. This is why I said. Let me make sure I do this. Yes, outthehouse.com. So let's see who repopulates. We'll give it a couple minutes and now. I don't know what happened. I mean, I paid the internet bill. I don't know why they. I don't know if it was just me or if it was why they did that. So I forgot what I was even saying. See, out there. Oh, thank you. Okay, you guys came back. Thank you. Appreciate you guys. Thank you. But yeah, so yeah, my book is outthehouse.com, which is my media company name, outthehouse.com. And if you're asking why my company's called outthehouse.com, because when I was in my early 20s and I was trying to I was running all over the city of Philadelphia, working on every film project I can find. I was neglecting my chores of my home, and my mother threatened to throw me out the house every day. It's like not even a joke. She's like, "You didn't do those dishes, I'm gonna throw you out of here." It was like every day, so I'm gonna get thrown out of the house for my love of film. My love of movies gonna get me thrown out the house, and that's why it's called outthehouse.com or out the house. So yeah, it was hard. And I tell you this just on a side note for doing, filmmaking. Everything is so much easier now. I say this to my students all the time. It's like everything is just it's so accessible and it's so easy. So I remember, when I made my movie Dirty Laundry, I shot it in 16 millimeter film, video. That's my wife calling me. I'm back on. I know. Oh, okay. Okay. I forgot what I was saying. So yeah, so my love of film almost got me thrown out of the house. It got me thrown out the house. So yeah, it was. I was saying everything was just so much hard. I remember shooting. Video cameras existed when I went to shoot my film in 1997, but they were nowhere near what they are now. The quality of getting anything good. Video cameras didn't start getting good until for like actual filmmaking. I mean, with the exception of Star Wars Episode 1, 1999, of course, that was one thing. But talking about, I think it was Superbad, Jonah Hill movie, Michael Cera, Superbad. They shot that with video on video, and that was one of the that was one of the movies when they were really start doing like the revolutions really started to take over, and then Robert Rodriguez started really pushing video filmmaking. So all that being said was like, but it's still just super expensive. Now it's so crazy. Like if you want to make a movie, the movie that came out, The Creator with John David Washington, that film was shot with a $3,800 camera that you can buy right now. $3,800. Now again, that's not a nickel, but effectively they shot a feature film with a camera that cost $3,800. When before you were talking about easily 125, 150 grand just to get started, just to get the base without all the stuff to it. So it's so accessible. And the same thing with comic books now. It's just so much easier. Getting things printed is so much easier. Finding artists is so much easier. But Fiverr and things like that, finding artists is easier. Finding getting your things copywritten is so much easier. It's just everything is just like, again, when I first looked into what it would take for me to do it, I saw all these like monumental steps to get through. And because, like I said, I went through those same monumental steps when I was trying to make the movie. And I saw that when I went to go make comic books, and I was like, I don't want to go through monumental steps. I didn't want to dump all this money into a comic book. It was going to probably cost me easily 20 grand to get a comic book done. I realized what everything would cost, and then take over a year plus to try to get it done, and then or 2 years to get it done, and then get one book out there, and then run around the city trying to sell one comic book. I just like, no, this is not. I do not have the capacity to do this in this way. Uh, because one of the big keys, I'm gonna say this as well about building your. Remember talking about building your brand. I talked about it before. Is that consistency with your books? Now, it is hard to doing a book a month is really, really hard. Even if you have the funding, it's hard. A lot of artists will not do a book a month. People just flame out. It's a lot of work, and there are people who are superheroes. I remember talking about Prince, and I always use Prince as a reference because Prince, the musician, I love Prince. But if you look at Prince's history, and I'll just tell you how Prince was. Prince was a uber talented, uber hardworking, uber craftsman in every capacity of his career as a musician. He could play. He was, I mean, not the fact that he could just play like a guitar. He was a 10 at guitar. And the guitar is a hard instrument to learn. Trust me, because I try to play guitar and I'm terrible at it. Here, I got here. I'm not going to take it out, but that's my guitar, and I'm terrible at playing guitar. Guitar is a hard instrument to learn, but he was a 10 at guitar, like a 10. He could play with anybody in the world. He was that good. He was a 10 at the bass. He was a 10 at the drums. He was a 10 on the piano. So just that alone set him aside from everybody. His songwriting, his composition, his on stage presence, his let's go create a guitar solo. Yeah, he got the solo that you look at them that just make you say how good he is. If you understand how guitar works. Again, I'm not good at it at all, but understanding how guitar works. And if you watch his solo for when he does a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Museum and they're inducting George Harrison, his solo on that, look it up, like Prince, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, George Harrison, they're doing My Guitar Gently Weeps. He just murders the stage. I mean, and it's amazing. And it was like, it didn't even practice that like that. Like he came out, he did the practice. He came back out and he just like basically just did him. And it just amazing. So anyway, Prince is Prince. So I always use him as a mark, is like saying, like, can you do it all yourself? If you're Prince, yes. And Prince did play almost every instrument on some of his albums. But if most of us are not Prince, I mean, we can be super uber talented in one place, but not that in another place. So it's you could do it all yourself, but I would say it's probably better to get bandmates to help you. You know what I mean? If depending on where you are. I mean, unless you're at that level of talent and you want to spend your entire life every day working on the craft, which is what Prince did every day. He worked on music every day of his life, like every single day. That was his life. And again, not just every day. When I say every day, he was like all day, every day. A lot of times, like he would play in the morning for fun. He would do a sound check at sometimes to say he'd take 3 hours on the sound check, then play his 2.5-hour show, and then leave there and go to the studio and record music, or sometimes leave his show and then go to a small club and play at a club for 2 hours. I mean, he was that's how he was. So if you're that person, but I mean, most of us don't live that life, and I wouldn't even suggest it. I think it's obsessive to some extent. But all right. So do you think comic genres are growing beyond superheroes a little now? Yes, and because before the comic book genre came in, which really started with Superman and Action Comics, Superman, 1935. Before that really pushed in the whole superhero genre, comic books existed with all kinds of book stories. And one thing that I get too, which I was told, because my book is a sci-fi thing. This is 3 issues. This is the first issue. I get confused. This is the graphic novel. This is the first issue, and then this is the first 3 issues together. One thing I was told a couple of times, like, I'm glad to see you doing something outside of the superhero genre. And there's nothing wrong with the superhero genre. The superhero genre is great. It's going to last. It's going to continue on. But there were a lot of people who were saying, I'm really happy that you're doing stuff outside of the superhero genre because, just want to see some different things, which is good. But what I'll also say is this as well, is that whatever you're doing, and I heard this too, because again, I'm working on distribution with my books. I'm getting it into stores. And one thing that I did, again, because I started with one store and I worked it all the way through for 6 months, and I put the books in, I let them sell. I came back, I talked to the owner, I asked about how they were selling. And again, so I did the homework. I didn't just put the books out and say, I'm just going to try to get in a bunch of stores, because I wanted to, because what I've learned, as I said before, is this: you're going to make mistakes. So it's always better to make mistakes on a small level than it makes mistakes on a big level. It's good to make mistakes on your 8-page comic book than to do it on a 22-page comic book. And I say this too, if you're going to do it, and because I think that's not a bad idea. If you're going to do an 8-page comic book and you know the art maybe not be the best, like go on Fiverr and find someone who do your work for $25 a page and just work something out. And to believe it or not, you can actually still sell that book. You can still make that and sell it almost like an ash can or otherwise. And say this was my comic book. Make like a quick 8-page story. Try to do it as inexpensively as possible. Get some things printed. I wouldn't even necessarily say don't even worry about the UPC code at that point, and just put them out there and just see how people respond to it. They respond to the story, respond to the character. See what the mistakes are. Like make those mistakes. And then it's okay, this works, I know what I'm doing, and then go and do the bigger one. But I would say make your mistakes, because you're going to, there's nothing wrong with failing. I think we've gotten so much into the place of, I think, in society about if you fail, you're a bad person. Everybody fails. Everybody. Failing does not make you a failure. So write that down, put it on a shirt. Failing does not make you a failure. We all fail. Even the greatest of us fail. Michael Jordan has that great commercial. I missed 9,000 shots. Michael Jordan was not Michael Jordan the first time he picked up a basketball. And I failed plenty of times in my life, plenty of times, because again, I'm a creative person, right? So as a creative person, I've done lots of stuff creatively. I made movies. How many movies and videos I've worked on that never seen the light of day? Tons of them. Like I went back at one point and tried to remember everything I ever worked on as a filmmaker in my career, like everything I ever done. And I worked on so many projects that were just duds. I mean, they weren't even my projects necessarily. They're just like they never seen the light of day. Like we everybody got all his crew and all his gear, and everybody showed up to the location, and the people in charge didn't know what they were doing, and went like one day, and they never got to day two. It's like supposed to be a movie. They shot one day, and it all went kaput. But some people feel like, oh, I failed. But no, I mean, listen, you learned, and you probably should have learned it on a smaller level. But so it's okay to fail and make and to do it wrong, because again, I one of my stories, I'm actually going to write an article about this, because I write articles on LinkedIn as well. If you look me up, I see. Hold on. I tell my students at times to say, at one point I was famous, which I wasn't really, really famous, but I was known. I've been around long enough that if you Google my name, I tell the kids, Google my name, Shannon Newby. And all these things came up, say, oh, wow. Like, are you rich? Like, no, I am not rich. Not by a long shot. If I was rich, I wouldn't be here with you every day. So, but I'm writing an article on LinkedIn right now about failing, because I failed. What I considered my first, not even my first, my second documentary. I did a documentary about life on a basketball playground, and I thought I knew what I was doing. I thought I knew what I was trying to do, and I spent a lot of time and energy on this project. I went out and shot all this footage and shot all these people playing basketball and just everything, just like everything. I put a lot of time and energy into this. And that was what my mother threatened to throw me out the house, because I was like running around every day, like trying to do this. I was at community college at the time, and running around every day trying to get this thing. I shot all this footage, I got all these tapes, and I sit there for hours and hours and hours and all this editing. And when I finished it, it was a complete turd. It's like, but my professor was telling me beforehand, this is not, you don't have it yet. You don't have it yet. And I couldn't see what was wrong with what he was telling me, because I just couldn't see it. He kept telling me, you don't have it yet. And he said, what you're trying to do, it's not there yet. You think you don't have it. So, but anyway, I kept going. And when I finished it, it was a complete turd. Yes. And but immediately after it was over, after I shot it all and I laid it all out, and I spent hours and hours and hours and weeks of editing and put it all together, and I looked at it and I was like, this is terrible. But right after it was over, and I looked at it and I saw it like this, I swear to you, like a light bulb came off and turned on my head. It's like, that's what he was saying. That's what he was telling me. But I couldn't see it until I did it. You know what I mean? So once I did it and I saw it, like a light bulb went off in my head. And for me, honestly, I was at that point, my work as a filmmaker got better like overnight. Like I understood storytelling. Like my ability to tell stories on film, like immediately went from, mid-range to like good, and I'm not saying I was the greatest ever, but it went from okay to like really, really good. everything changed for me, right? Like, and then my very next project, it was like night and day, like my ability to tell stories. And Charlie Parker is a great story. Charlie Parker, if you ever see the movie Bird, which is, again, I like the movie because I like Charlie Parker and I like Bird, but there's a lot of things historically not right in that film. But Charlie Parker, the great Charlie Parker, jazz saxophone player, um, he was that way. He was like, basically, he wasn't good. He was playing, and he was so bad on stage as a teenager. Someone took the cymbal off. This really had to take the cymbal off the drum kit and threw it on the stage as complete disrespect, to say that this is awful. You're awful. Get off the stage. And it was so awful, and it got off the stage. So like it was like, that kid was terrible. Like, no one would have ever thought he would come back ever and do anything good, because one, he was bad. Two, he was completely embarrassed by it. But then fast forward, like, it was like not even like a year or two later, he came back and he was doing stuff that was like, you can do that with a horn? Like, he changed the whole game. It was like who's this guy? That's the same kid? Like, he was innovating, at a high level. And it was it was like 2 years later. I wasn't like this, if that. But at some point, I guess the light turned on for him, and that's what happened with me. My light turned on. My ability to tell stories on film, it just turned. But I would not have gotten that if I had not failed, and if I had not failed spectacularly, and if I had not failed with all the time and energy I put into it. I couldn't until I got to that point. I would have never figured that out. As a journal learning, I explore ideas, drawing jot down story ideas. Yeah, so I do that as well. I keep in fact, I keep one on my desk as well. That's my journal. Like, ideas come, you just jot stuff down. I keep it in there, and always good to have a journal where the pages don't tear out. So it'll always be there. Filmmaker's perspective. After failing, would you release your project digitally and market it and go to events and promote it? It depends on how I felt about it. So if I did show the work after it was done, I did have screenings for the documentary. I screened it a few times, but you cringe because things were not bad. The one thing I'll say is this: if you put it out there, if you put it out there, don't make excuses for it. You can explain what happened, but don't make excuses for it, because you created it and you put it out to the public, and people say, "Oh, this is terrible." It's like, yeah, well, it was not just, I had some issues. This is what happened. I make no excuses. I did the best I knew how to do it this time, or maybe you didn't, but don't make excuses for it. I mean, it is what it is when you created it, So that's the way. That's how I see it. Just so. But my following documentary, the next documentary I did after that, one's called "I Have a Name." It was about a homeless guy that shined shoes, about another guy who, about a group of guys who squeegee windows at, if you live from Philly, near Island Avenue, they have squeegee guys out there to squeegee windows for money. And the third guy who used to collect cans in the cart. And it was about people who have what people consider like they're bums, but they weren't bums. A bum is being someone who's lazy, who doesn't try to, they weren't bums. They were working people. They found a way to make a living the best they knew how in their life, and that's what they did. So they shined shoes and squeegee windows and picked up metal cans, and they made a living the best they knew how. And it's I Have a Name, and I called that because I found that people really just looked down on them. They just looked like they were not real people, and they looked, and it was like, it was so. It was. I knew it existed, but it was so much more eye opening for me, and my Christian heart said, it opened me up to something, a place of just being more compassionate about people who are in that space. So that was my next, and again, my storytelling, and that again, my technology was still low because that's where it was, but the storytelling got drastically better after that. Yes, I tell really personal stories and really need the kind of storytelling, and me kind of in depth. Yeah. I mean, again, these are, yes, these are my real stories, but that's why, and what I'm saying too before, it's like my channel was supposed to be about these stories, because I have a ton of them, because like, as I was saying before, I'm a creative person, and I spent my life as a creative person. from the age of 9, or, I started writing stories when I was, in elementary school just for fun. And, some real nerd stuff. And then I started making films, on video with, making comic books. And, I've always been into music, although I've not been any good at it. I make beats as well, which I do not share with the public. And there are things that I do creatively that I don't share publicly. There are things that I do creatively just for the sake of being creative. Because if you're truly a creative person, you kind of have to do it. You just have to do it. Like if you don't do it, my brain goes crazy. And if I get into a point in life to where it's like I'm just working on things, like, working on, because again, I'm a creative person, but like making comic books and trying to put them out. I was talking about the business. This is business. This is me working on things and trying to get this to go and trying to make things work and trying to figure out how to get into stores and figuring out how to try to get this and figuring out how to try to get that. That's not creating. That's doing business. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if I just keep doing this all the time and I'm not creating at all, it drives me crazy. Like, I have to stop and say, okay, I have to create. So I have a novel that I've been working on, it seems like forever. And it started out as a buddy of mine in LA was telling me he wrote a story. And okay, here's how it started. And then we're gonna wrap up this first live part 2. Hold on. A friend of mine who knew I was a sci-fi writer sent me a prompt saying that they were looking for process of publication and how to do physical and legally release a book. Yes, all right. So I'll put a pin in that. So they sent me a prompt to say there's a magazine that looks for science fiction stories, and if you're interested to write it. And so I went and looked at what they were looking for, and they said, we will print anything. When we're a science fiction book, we'll print anything, even if it's not sci-fi, if it's good enough. So me being me, I wanted to challenge myself as a writer. Say, can I write something totally outside of the vein of what they do? So I wrote this very much spiritual story about a guy who I'm trying to say without. Basically about a guy who grew up not being a smart person and got themselves in all kind of trouble, and his friend who basically saved his life to some extent. And so I wrote this story. It was a very, very like uplifting kind of spiritual type of story. And they did not print it because they said we print sci-fi. But I did it on purpose. I wrote that purposely because I wanted to see how good of a writer am I. Can I write something so good that it's not outside of the genre and that they would still publish it? And they did not publish it, but I thought it was a really good story. It's like 2,000 words. And then I went out to LA, and I was out there hanging out with a friend of mine, and he wrote like a 5,000 page story and put it on Amazon KDP and said, I put it out there, and I sold like 7 copies the first week. And I was like, really? And so I said, I should try that. I just should try and see if it works. So I thought, like, I got this 2,000 word story, and then I'll make like 2 other 2,000 word stories. I'll make like 3 stories, and I'll put them together in a book, and it'll be like 6,000 words. And I'll put it out just to see if it works and see if I can do what he did and see if kids will buy it, people will buy it. And so I started writing without knowing where I was going. I just started writing. I wrote the first line, the first like 3-sentence paragraph. And it was like, I was like, and I don't like this. And I went back and did it again. And I chucked that and then came back and wrote another 3 pages. I was like, okay, this is like, and I was like, this is a hook. It's going to take me somewhere. And I just started writing, and I was going to write this nice 2,000 word story. And I just got lost, man. I got swept away, and I found that Stephen King writes the same way. And so my 2,000 word story ended up being 20,000 words. So, but the joy of writing it, the joy of just finding it, like this, the discovery of trying to find, yes, you're right. I like the premise. Right. I wrote it without having any outline. I just started writing a story, and just to see where it would go. And 20,000 words later, I finished the story. So then I was like, okay, I got a 20,000 word story, and I got this 2,000 word story. So you know what? I'm going to write the third, because I still want to do the 3 stories. So see, I'm gonna write the third story, and this one will be about so I'll make this 10,000 words, and then I'll beat up the middle story just so it won't be weird. So I'm in the third story now, and I'm about 15,000 words in, and I'm just now getting to the conflict of the story. But I found such joy in this writing process of just writing without knowing where I was going. Because most times, like when I'm writing a film script, I typically know in my head about 70% where the story is, where it's going, where it's going to break down, where the conflict is, and then I'll start actually typing. But I work it out in my head for days, or weeks, sometimes years. Like I have the stories kind of sitting in my head, and then when I get to the point, oh, this is something, then I'll start writing it out. But to just sit down and just start typing and not know where you're going. And then what if this happens? Oh, that'd be interesting. And then you're going to come down a path and it's like, oh, this path doesn't work. Yeah, maybe let's go back the other way. Let's go this way. Oh, this is working. Let's go this way. So, but again, I wasn't writing it at that point, writing it for release. I'm just writing it to write it, but I do plan on releasing it. So at some point I'm going to finish this novel. And now that I've been into now for it's years now, because again, it's been something fun to do. And I think I want to keep doing that. So at some point, I'm going to be releasing novels as well, because I have a publishing company, so why not? All right. So, all right. Last couple questions. Can you explain the process of publication? Like, how do you physically and legally release a book? So I got a couple things on that. So if you look at other videos, the one talking about copyright and trademark, that's the stuff. So again, legally release a book, basically make a book and you can just say, here's my book. You know what I mean? So when I made a movie, before I even had the barcode, I released it. I just released and just put it out there. So legally, you just release it, you just make it, and you put it out to the public. But publication. So publications is just about publishing. So making something and then putting it out. So if it comes to the legal side of it, so you can make a book, and once you create something, the second you create it, it's already copywritten in the universe. So it doesn't matter if no one's ever seen it. As soon as you create something, it's copywritten. So if you make this comic book and you don't actually send it to the copyright office and you give it out to all your friends, right? You give out 100 copies to all your friends, and your friends are out there. And then 5 years later, you see someone putting out your book, and it's like your book. Like you can really say, okay, you really just stole my whole book. Even though you did not copyright it, you can get your 100 friends to go to court and say, yes, he did release it on this date. Here's us at the party when he released it. Here are the pictures of us to release the book. Here's the thing, so forth and so on. You can prove it in court that you did release it at that time. Then you have a case to actually fight it. But the easier way is to spend $65 with the copyright office and take it to there. So again, once something is copywritten, it's copywritten forever. So same thing with trademarking. So a trademark. So remember I talked about this. Having a trademark, when you trademark something, you put the little TM next to it. It's like you telling the world, here is my so it's not that many barriers across. It's not. Some of it is it's to just do it. Anybody can just do it. So again, I can sit here right now and grab a pencil and draw a comic book, in one of these kind of things like this, right? And in my little composition book, draw pictures and draw word bubbles and tear the pages out, photocopy them, and staple them together when they make an ash can. How many people have no ash cans or ash cans like little homemade books? And I'll talk about ash cans another time. And people do that because the ash can community is a big thing. A lot of people do create ash cans, and basically they just make as many copies as they can very quickly, and they sell their ash cans. The people who really collect ash cans, the ash can comic community is a real thing, and you can do that and just sell what you got, and there's nothing to stop you. So but my videos that I keep talking about being professionals, because again, I've made stuff independently for fun, my terrible drawings and everything else. But now I really want to do this professionally. So an ash can is basically making a mini comic at home. So my mini comic here, it's not an ash can, but it could be considered one. It can be considered one, but this is my mini comic. So I'm putting out this little mini comic on purpose first, and to see how kids took to it, and see how I felt about it. Because this is experimental. That's one thing I want to talk about too. Now, I'll be here for 3 hours. But and so people make these make these at home, and then they print them sometimes on a copier, like a photocopier, and they staple them at home. They get you can get the make sure you got to get the book stapler. So it's like not the regular stapler like this, but you get up the book stapler that's like long, and you slide the books in and you staple them that way, and you fold them over, which is called saddle stitching. And then you take those books and then sell them. So you can they'll just print a bunch of them, and then they'll take them to like the marketplace and sell them, or they'll give them out. They're called ash cans because it was like I can't remember the exact thing that happened, but the artists would make these little things like these little books in the at the comic book offices, and they would put them in a trash can, and like with the ash, they call it ash can. They basically like throwaways. Now people have when they were reading, they throw them away, and I don't know why it's called. That's why they call it ash cans, but that's what they were. So with that being said, one thing I said about this is getting my Super Nana Cap app book. So this was experimental, and that's one thing I want to say is this as well. And I talked to different comic book stores about this as I'm going forward. This is my last point, and then I'm going to answer your questions. Is that if you're going to make a book and you're making a superhero, don't make discount Spider-Man. Don't make discount Superman. I call it discount Superman. Like, because if you make a character just like Superman, like why would I buy your book if I could just buy Superman? You want to make sure if you're doing something, be original. If you look at what everyone's doing across the board and say, I'm going to do what they're doing because everyone's doing this, so I'm going to do this now because this is hot, so I'm going to do this. And I'm not knocking that. If you want to do that, thumbs up, God bless you. But we're already fighting a battle as indie comic book producers. So don't make a discount Wolverine. Oh, he has 4 claws instead of 3. Make sure you're having something that's original stuff. That's why I say it's better to just create something that you want to create originally, and put it out there and see how it feels, than to just try to follow trends. Because, and again, I'm gonna say this: I do not knock people for following trends. I don't. Some people get angry and want to call people sellouts for creating things just to sell them. But I say like Hollywood, they just want to make something, they just want to sell it. I don't knock people for that. I don't. That's not something I typically do. But it's commerce. I mean, like anything else, people say, "Oh, he's just making shirts because he want to sell shirts." Well, of course he want to sell shirts. He makes shirts. So he's just making comic books. He just want to sell comic books. He's making this is the same old superhero stuff. Okay, but if that's what they're doing, that's what they're doing. But if you want to, but as an indie, you're already fighting kind of uphill battle. So again, if you go into a comic book store with a discount Superman comic book, it's Superman, but it's not Superman. It's like, okay, well, this looks like any other Superman book. Why would I, give up my very valuable shelf space to put up your discount Superman book? You know what I mean? So, be original. So this book for me was it didn't start off this way. Because here's what happened. I was working on MUNCH, and I was like, I want to put out another book. All my research were kind of been doing MUNCH. So could I do something to make a book? And there's another book a buddy of mine showed me, called The Gray, which is a photo comic book, which I still want to try because I thought it was like, well, so it was a photo comic book. So if you're taking pictures and then taking the pictures and then putting the pictures in Photoshop, kind of making them making them comic book like, and then making a comic book out of those photos. And it was a really interesting story. And I was like, wow. He's like, yeah, people are doing these. So I was like, can I do that? I'm a photographer. I'm a filmmaker. I can take pictures. Can I tell an interesting story like that? And I actually wrote a whole script, a comic book script, on a photo, on a comic book based on me taking pictures. And I was actually pursuing doing that. And but because, like I said, I had so much research, I was tied up in getting MUNCH going. I was like, I don't have this. So what if I do this, but I have to do it with puppets? So okay, well, what puppets would you use? And I started thinking about it. It's like, well, if I want to do with puppets, they should be my original puppets. So that's where this came in. So I actually made the puppets. These are real puppets that I made because I'm a creative person. I'm a nerd. I'm creative. I can't help it. I have to create every day, or I go crazy. But so I created these puppets, and this was a process. I actually videotaped me going through the process of making these puppets. Hey, yes, my Pathmark friend. Yes, I spent many years at Pathmark as a cashier. So and I wrote a story about horrible jobs. And it's a LinkedIn article I wrote. But I talk about Pathmark, but Pathmark was not really a horrible job because I made some really great lifelong friends at Pathmark. That's my buddy Ellis, who was actually on the episode of my TV show. But I made these puppets, and so when I did puppets, I said, okay, this is great. Let's do that. And then I realized that some of the things I was trying to do did not work well as puppets. I tried to build a whole puppet world. And I was like, this is too much. But they said, well, why don't you hire an artist to do hire an artist to do this part of it, because it'll make sense. I said, okay, I can do that. And I hired an artist to do one part of the story. So then I had another part and say, well, no, why not hire an artist to do this part? So it became this, I started thinking about genre bending. It became this thing to where it's like I hired one artist, you know, and this is a buddy of mine, his son, who's just absolutely fantastic. He did the cover. He's grown, but he's a buddy of mine. But he did the first, he did the cover and he did the first story with digital art. And then I did puppets and one other part. And then I hired another artist to do this part. So it's one story, but it's like chapters of a story, and it changes styles throughout the book. And I discovered this by accident. I did not plan on doing this in this vein. I just did it. I just figured it out for a year just doing it, and I really appreciate it. I was like, wow. So I've been showing it around to different people. It's like, what do you think? And I've been getting a lot of great feedback on this. So now this is my next big book. My next book is a 100-page book like this. Like, so think like Dogman. So this is gonna be like my next. This is like gonna be like a Dogman type book, 100-page kids book, and I'm working on that right now. So don't be afraid to try stuff. You know, again, we're artists. We create. So don't be afraid to be an artist and create stuff. All right. And yes, so again, I'm not begging. I'm just making you aware if you want to drop $1 and help a brother out, because this does cost money. Because I saw the dollar thing. So I did get monetized. I just recently got monetized with the stickers and things like that. So I take $1 as fast as I take a quarter. So, but the homeless guy told me that. So is an LLC necessary to publishing a book or fulfillment? No. So an LLC stands for limited liability company or limited liability corporation. An LLC, you do not need to be an LLC. An LLC helps you to protect your, it makes you more legitimate. Like, so again, my media company is an LLC, and I just have everything going through my LLC. So that's why I have it. But you do not need to have an LLC to do that. You can be what they call a sole proprietor and do this. So when it comes to legal situations, if someone wanted to sue you, if you have an LLC, everything goes through the company. And if something should go thing, they can sue the company, but they can't. But you know, it protects your personal assets. If for most kind of legal things. Now, if you do something like what's that person? I mean, you know, Alex Jones, it doesn't matter. They will come in, but they still protect. They still can take his house, but they can come after you. You know what I mean? So, but typically that you don't find yourself in that kind of situation. It's art like stop motion versus stop motion. It gets different look for a different story. Yes, so that's what it is. So it's a different story and different artists for each one of those things. All right, so we had about 15 people at one point in here. So this is my first live. So thank you guys. I hope I didn't ramble too much, because you know I get to talk and I can ramble. And if this was good, you know, thumbs up. Hopefully you guys will subscribe or give me thumbs up if you like this. And you know, I'll be trying to do I don't know what kind of schedule I'm going to do lives on, but maybe, like, again, my goal going forward right now is to start doing a video, one video a week with YouTube. That's the goal. So hopefully starting in April, and then maybe I'll start doing lives maybe once a month. I'm thinking, if you know, seeing how it goes and answer some questions like this, because the channel is growing. So again, I thank you everybody who's here. I truly do thank you guys for participating, for showing up, for watching the videos, for giving me thumbs up and subscribing. You know, it means the world to me. It truly does. This is a journey which going down. I didn't expect the journey to turn out this way, but I'm very happy, because that's what journeys are all about. Sometimes you think you're going one way, and then you find yourself in another way, and you find out that you know, you enjoy this part of it just as much. And that's how I became a teacher. I did not seek to be a teacher. It was not. I became a teacher. I kind of fell into it backwards. I was always saying, I started teaching. I used to do after school things with the library with kids, and then a buddy of mine got me hooked up with somebody else, and I did a whole summer program. And then after that, I used to volunteer at the school district of Philadelphia during their for the student film festival. And there I met a woman who said, "Wow, you're really good at this. You should think about teaching." And it came at a time in my life when I was ready to make a transition from being a freelance and having my freelance business to start teaching. And so I found myself as a teacher. And again, I truly enjoy teaching, maybe because I just like to hear myself talk, but I really enjoy teaching. And I would have never thought that I would enjoy teaching as much as I enjoyed filmmaking, or even comic book creation. But I really do enjoy teaching, which is why I will always teach in some capacity. But I'm ready to transition from doing it full time in the school system. To be quite honest with you. So with that being said, help support the channel, so I can go full time as a YouTuber and part time as a teacher, as opposed to being full time as a teacher and part time as a YouTuber. So thank you guys. Thanks for the time. Thank you. I appreciate it. You're welcome. And so yeah, I'll be around. So next week I'm going to try to put the next video up about how to hire an artist and give you guys a deep dive into that. And if you got any questions along the way, please shoot them out to me. So thank you. Appreciate you guys. And peace and blessings. Thank you, Dwayne. You all guys are welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.